How should you train so you can one day fight in the UFC? If you'd like to know my opinion, stay tuned and watch this short video. If you want to master MMA fundamentals, check out my instructional called MMA Essential Lessons. In it you can learn about clinch takedowns, boxing, grappling, Muay Thai, ground and pound, Thai and puppet master clinch, escapes from inferior positions, and shooting takedowns. Check out the link in the description below. Hi, my name is Mark Leichner from MMAcoach.net, where we teach coaches, fighters and enthusiasts how to train smart and not just hard. Today I'm answering a question from a YouTube user Bobby Backpack who asks, "Hi, I'm 19 and I have only a month of BJJ training and I want to be in the UFC in 5 to 10 years. What do I need to train and how often?" First things first, I like that you set a realistic time frame for your possible entry into UFC, since it's not gonna happen overnight. UFC is the world's best MMA promotion, which means that usually the best fighters are there. So to be able to participate, you're going to have to first prove yourself in smaller shows, then perhaps in a bit bigger ones, and only then get to UFC if you're good enough and UFC scouts recognize you as a talent. Since you're only a beginner, it is too early to tell if you will ever make it to the UFC or if you will even compete in MMA. It might seem now that you will get to UFC eventually, but know that out of all the people that try to compete, only a few continue to do so. Out of all those that continue competing, only a certain percentage will be good enough to ever get into the UFC. Out of all the UFC fighters, only a few people would get into top 5 or top 10 guys in your weight class. And out of all them, you will only have one champion. So you can see that the funnel is getting smaller and smaller, which means that most people who train and try competing will never become champions or even get into the UFC. That's how it is. That might not be the case with you. For all I know, you could be the next big thing. Who knows? It is way too early to tell, and you should concentrate on enjoying the training process. Start competing in BJJ or other grappling sports to get some competitive experience, and after some time, take lessons in other MMA related sports like boxing and wrestling. And of course MMA lessons. Most fighters have backgrounds in some combat sport where they have competed and experienced all that goes with it. It doesn't have to be grappling sports. You can also compete in striking, which will definitely provide you with invaluable experience. But in my opinion, the risk of brain damage is too high. When you and your coach think that it is time to compete in MMA, start with amateur MMA. I talked about this in my video called When to Start Competing in MMA. There is a link in the description. When you start MMA, continue competing in grappling sports and see if you enjoy the whole competitive experience and if you would like to do more of it. If you do good, then you will naturally progress from amateur MMA to smaller shows. There you will gain more experience, and if your fight record is good, you will be able to get to UFC one day. This is not always the case. Take Ben Askren for example. He should have been in the UFC a long time ago and has never lost a fight. But they probably don't want to sign him up because they think that his style of fighting is not marketable enough. I presume they think that. So even when you have a perfect score, it is still possible not to get into UFC. But I would say that this is an exception to the rule. As for how often you need to train, that will depend on how much time you have and if you can rest and recuperate properly. I presume you will either go to college or work, or both, so you won't have time to train 2 to 3 times a day right away. That only comes later when fighters sign contracts that enable them to only train and not work. And the vast majority of fighters never quit their day jobs, since MMA is not a high-paying sport. I might do a video on that subject in the future. Anyway, you will have to prioritize, since you will not have time for everything. The best is to have classes in separate sports like wrestling, boxing, BJJ and Muay Thai, and also have MMA classes where all these elements are combined. But it is not realistic. So let's say that your wrestling and boxing is lacking, but you don't have time to go to both classes. Then you go to a boxing class and you will practice wrestling in your MMA or BJJ class, so you won't completely neglect it. That was just an example of how you must prioritize. Many MMA champions use ground and pound as their go-to strategy. If you want to learn how to do it properly, check out my Total Ground and Pound Blueprint instructional. The link is in the description. Question for today. What are your goals for MMA? Would you like to compete in the UFC one day, and how would you go about achieving that goal? Let me know in the comments below. If you liked this video, like it and share it, and you can also subscribe to my channel. If you'd like a more in-depth MMA training, check out my instructional. My name is Mark Leichner from MMAcoach.net, and I will see you again very soon.